Episode 9, The Gilded Warning. Sabrina stepped into the Gilded Grove as dawn's first rays pierced the eternal mist, casting ethereal shadows through the golden canopy. The corrupted scepter in her hands thrummed with discordant energy, its crystal core flickering between deep amber and vibrant emerald. Through the fragmented lens, she watched waves of power ripple outward, making the grove's natural magic dance and swirl like autumn leaves caught in a spring breeze. "The readings are off the charts," Noah murmured beside her, frowning at his handheld detector. The device's screen pulsed with familiar patterns, the same chaotic frequencies they'd encountered in the maze's hidden chamber. The scepter's vibrations intensified as they approached the grove's heart, where the oldest trees stood like ancient guardians. Sabrina watched, fascinated, as the surrounding foliage shifted in response to the artifact's presence. Golden leaves transformed to spring green before returning to their natural state, creating a mesmerizing display of seasonal flux. A gentle warmth bloomed in her awareness as Quill's essence stirred through nearby plants. Delicate vines curled toward a massive tree that dominated the grove's center, its trunk etched with intricate spiral patterns. Raising the lens, Sabrina gasped. The tree's markings perfectly matched the crystalline structure within the scepter, down to the smallest detail. "Look at this," she said, moving closer to examine the patterns. "These aren't random designs, they're part of some kind of locking mechanism." Following Quill's subtle guidance, Sabrina aligned the scepter with the spiraling marks. The artifact's corrupted energy surged, making the tree's bark ripple and crack. Slowly, it peeled away to reveal an archway filled with pulsing magical runes. The moment she touched the scepter to the doorway's threshold, violent energy exploded outward. The artifact's conflicting magics clashed against the ancient wards, threatening to tear the entrance apart. Sabrina gritted her teeth, feeling the chaos trying to overwhelm her connection to the grove's natural balance. "Sabrina." Noah reached for her, but she shook her head. "I've got this," she assured him, closing her eyes to focus. Through her strengthened bond with Quill, she felt the essence of Hallowville's magic flowing through the grove's root system. Like conducting an orchestra, she guided the opposing forces within the scepter into harmony with the door's enchantments. Spring and autumn magic merged and separated in a careful dance, following the rhythm she and Quill had perfected together. The runes flickered, shifted, and finally aligned. With a deep rumble, the doorway swung open to reveal a circular chamber bathed in soft, otherworldly light. As they stepped inside, luminescent carvings awakened along the walls, responding to their presence like stars appearing at twilight. Sabrina lifted the fragmented lens, and the chamber's true nature revealed itself. These weren't simple carvings, they were magical recordings, preserved in crystal and light. Like the historical scenes they'd witnessed in the maze, but these images spoke of a different place entirely. The first sequence bloomed to life before them, showing a magnificent structure she'd never seen before. "The Twilight Sanctuary," she breathed, recognizing it from ancient texts she'd studied. The recording pulsed with residual magic so strong she could feel its echo across time, a perfect balance of seasonal energies working in complete harmony. Through the lens, she watched the sanctuary's magic flow in precise, beautiful patterns. Spring and autumn power moved together like perfectly matched dance partners, neither attempting to lead or dominate. The image filled her with a profound sense of rightness, as if she were witnessing the natural order of things before something had gone terribly wrong. Noah studied the recordings with intense focus. "The magical signature matches fragments we found in the maze. Whatever happened here is connected to what's happening in Hallowville now." Quill's essence rippled through nearby plants, drawing Sabrina's attention to subtle details in the recording, the way the sanctuary's magic mirrored the Tree of Seasons' current energy patterns, the familiar symbols that matched markings they discovered throughout town. Each new detail added another piece to the puzzle they were trying to solve. Sabrina moved deeper into the chamber, the fragmented lens revealing layers of magical history etched into the crystalline walls. Each carving pulsed with residual energy, transforming from simple etchings into vivid magical recordings as she approached. The next sequence showed the Twilight Sanctuary in its prime, its spires reaching toward an eternally twilit sky. But as the recording continued, she watched discord spread like cracks through the foundation. A group of robed figures gathered in the sanctuary's heart, their magic blazing with familiar spring-touched energy as they performed rituals meant to shift the hub's natural alignment. "This feels too familiar," she murmured, recognizing the same fervent determination she'd seen in Ivy's eyes during town meetings. The ancient faction's attempts to force change had created spreading instability, visible through the lens as fractures in the sanctuary's magical framework. Noah ran his hands along a section of wall covered in intricate geographical markers. "Sabrina, look at this. These coordinates." He pulled out a modern map of Hallowville, comparing it to the carved details. The Twilight Sanctuary stood exactly where we are now. The Gilded Grove grew from its ruins. The revelation sent a chill through her. Through the lens, she watched the sanctuary's final moments play out in haunting detail. The magical backlash had been catastrophic, releasing waves of raw power that reshaped the entire region. The golden trees had sprouted from these ashes, their unusual properties suddenly making perfect sense. They were living magical batteries, still feeding on the sanctuary's residual energy after all these years. Quill's essence stirred anxiously through the chamber's scattered plants as Sabrina examined the next sequence. The magical signature radiating from the carvings matched the energy traces they'd been tracking around town, the collector's unique magical fingerprint. But seeing it here, preserved in ancient crystal, made no sense unless they're copying it, she realized, watching the recorded destruction through the lens. The collector isn't just stealing artifacts, they're deliberately recreating the conditions that destroyed the sanctuary. A cluster of vines suddenly coiled toward a specific section of wall, Quill's essence making them glow with urgent energy. Sabrina turned the lens toward the indicated carvings and felt her breath catch. The recording showed the sanctuary's protective artifacts being systematically corrupted, their power twisted until they became agents of destruction rather than protection. "Noah, this is exactly what's happening to our magical anchors," she said, comparing the recorded patterns to recent events in Hallowville. The missing artifacts from the Historical Society, the tampered wards, the portal disruptions, it's all following the same sequence. The chamber seemed to respond to her understanding, the crystals pulsing with increased intensity. A final recording activated, showing a precise astronomical alignment. Stars and planets moved through their ancient paths, forming a configuration that had amplified the sanctuary's destructive resonance beyond control. Noah checked his phone's astronomical app, his expression grim. "That's not just any alignment, it's showing the upcoming equinox. The exact same configuration, down to the minute." Sabrina studied the recording through the lens, absorbing every detail of the celestial pattern. They had less than a week before the stars aligned exactly as they had when the Twilight Sanctuary fell. Less than a week to prevent the collector from using Hallowville's own magical anchors to tear the town's foundation apart. The crystalline walls continued their silent narration, but Sabrina's mind was already racing ahead, calculating what they'd need to protect the Tree of Seasons from suffering the sanctuary's fate. Each carving added another crucial piece to the puzzle, revealing both the danger they faced and, perhaps, the key to preventing disaster. Through the lens, she watched the ancient story unfold with perfect clarity, while Quill's essence wove patterns of warning through the chamber's scattered greenery. The sanctuary's fate was meant to be a lesson, not a blueprint, but the collector had twisted its cautionary tale into a methodology for destruction. Sabrina adjusted the fragmented lens, its crystalline surface catching the ethereal light as she focused on the final sequence of carvings. The chamber's walls seemed to breathe with ancient magic, and through the lens, new layers of information bloomed like frost patterns across glass. "There's more here," she said, tracing the intricate details now visible. The sanctuary's collapse wasn't just about magical overload. "Look at these energy signatures." The lens revealed pulsing threads of power woven through the images, each one precisely documented in the crystalline record. Noah crouched beside her, his handheld detector whirring. "These readings, they're identical to what we picked up at the tree last week." He showed her the display, where familiar wavelengths danced across the screen. The collector isn't just copying the sanctuary's destruction, they're following it like a recipe. The revelation settled cold in Sabrina's stomach. Through the lens, she watched the recorded destruction unfold with new clarity. Each artifact's corruption appeared as a spreading stain of altered magic, spring energy overwhelming the careful balance that had kept the sanctuary stable. She pulled out the scepter they'd recovered from the maze, studying it through the lens. The same telltale modifications marred its surface as delicate alterations that would turn protective magic into a destructive force. They've already started the process. The scepter's been changed, just like the sanctuary's artifacts were. A gentle rustling drew her attention as Quill's essence stirred through the chamber's scattered vegetation. Vines curved toward a section of wall she hadn't yet examined, their leaves glowing with urgent purpose. Sabrina shifted the lens, and her breath caught at what it revealed. The hidden carving showed the sanctuary's final moments in vivid magical detail. Raw power had erupted from the destabilized hub in a catastrophic surge, but the recording showed something else, something deliberate. The energy wasn't just released, she realized. Someone was ready to harness it. Like setting off a bomb to collect the blast, Noah said, his voice grim. He ran his fingers along the carved details. If someone knew exactly when and how the sanctuary would fall. The chamber suddenly blazed with light, illuminating a complex network of ley lines etched into its curved ceiling. Through the lens, Sabrina saw how the sanctuary's power had flowed along these channels. Each intersection, each surge point, matched perfectly with the locations of Hallowville's recent portal disturbances. The collector's been placing the portals strategically, she said, comparing the patterns. They're not random appearances, they're pressure points in the magical network, just like the ones that tore the sanctuary apart. Noah pulled out his tablet, scrolling through archived town records. Listen to this, he said, reading from a centuries-old account. The sanctuary's guardians face mounting pressure to embrace progress. Voices of change speak of natural evolution, of letting magic find its true form. It goes on to describe how these seemingly reasonable suggestions undermine their protective measures. Sabrina thought of Ivy's recent speeches, her carefully chosen words about allowing Hallowville's magic to evolve naturally toward spring. The parallel was impossible to ignore. History isn't just repeating itself, she said. Someone's deliberately recreating it. The lens revealed more details as she studied the carvings, precise timing of magical surges, specific artifact modifications, exact positions of power concentrations. The sanctuary's guardians had documented everything, perhaps hoping their experience would prevent future disasters. Instead, their careful records had become a blueprint for destruction. Quill's essence pulsed through nearby plants with increasing urgency, making them bend and sway in patterns that matched the recorded power fluctuations. The connection between past and present grew clearer with each revelation. The collector wasn't just threatening Hallowville's magic, they were orchestrating its collapse with methodical precision. Sabrina traced the ley line patterns with her finger, watching how they aligned with familiar locations around town. The historical society, the park, the Gilded Grove itself, each spot marked a crucial point in the collector's recreation of the sanctuary's fall. Through the lens, she could see how these positions would channel and amplify magical energy when the moment came. The equinox alignment isn't just about timing, she said, understanding flowing like ice water through her veins. It's about maximizing the power they can capture when everything falls apart. Sabrina watched in fascination as Quill's essence flowed through a patch of luminescent moss, causing it to pulse in a rhythmic pattern. Through the fragmented lens, the pulsing transformed into a vivid projection, showing the sanctuary's final moments in devastating detail. Magical bridges sparked into existence, connecting different realms through tears in reality itself. The raw power hadn't simply destroyed, it had created pathways between worlds. Noah, look at this. She adjusted the lens, revealing ghostly overlays of energy signatures. The collector's portal experiments weren't random tests. They were calibrating something. The lens showed how each portal's position corresponded to points where the sanctuary's bridges had formed. They're mapping out exactly where the dimensional tiers will appear when Hallowville's magic breaks down. The realization made her previous encounters snap into focus. Every stolen artifact, each mysterious appearance, they weren't isolated incidents but carefully calculated steps. She thought of the modified wards at the Historical Society, the strange energy signatures in the greenhouse, the precise locations of portal manifestations. The collector hadn't just been causing trouble, they'd been conducting a methodical survey of Hallowville's magical infrastructure. They're weakening the bonds between Halloween and spring magic, she said, watching the sanctuary's recorded death throes. Just like here, see how the balance didn't snap all at once? It eroded, piece by piece, until the projection showed the final collapse, a cascade of failing protective spells that had seemed random but now revealed their terrible purpose. The chamber's walls shifted, responding to her understanding. New carvings emerged, showing how the sanctuary's guardians had missed crucial warning signs. Sabrina's heart sank as she recognized similar patterns happening right now around the Tree of Seasons, subtle changes in magical resonance, microscopic shifts in ley line alignment, the gradual alteration of protective barriers. All things she'd noticed but hadn't connected until this moment. Through the lens, she studied a detailed sequence depicting the sanctuary's final collapse. The destruction had created a magical vacuum, a void hungry for power. But the carvings showed something more, deliberate modifications to artifacts and wards that had transformed that vacuum into a controllable force. The similarity to the collector's recent activities was unmistakable. The scepter, the modified wards, even the tampering with the Grove's dormant energy, she said, pieces clicking into place. They're not just weapons, they're components of a larger mechanism. When Hallowville's magic breaks down, these altered artifacts will channel and redirect the power. Quill's essence surged through nearby plants, creating a living diagram of the sanctuary's defensive network. Sabrina watched how it had tried to adapt, spreading protective energy through root systems much like Quill did now. But the changes had come too quickly, overwhelming the natural safeguards. The pattern matched Hallowville's current situation perfectly, their protective measures weren't failing, they were being systematically outpaced. The chamber darkened, and a final vision emerged through the lens. The sanctuary's destruction had rippled outward, destabilizing magical balance across multiple realms. Sabrina saw how the collapse had created a cascading effect, weakening dimensional boundaries and disrupting ancient magical networks far beyond the sanctuary's borders. This isn't just about Hallowville, she breathed, horror mounting as she understood the true scope of the threat. If the collector succeeds, they'll trigger a chain reaction through every connected magical realm. The lens showed how each dimensional bridge, each tear in reality, would compound the damage, spreading magical instability like cracks through ice. Noah studied the energy readings on his detector, his expression grim. These power signatures are already starting to match the sanctuary's pre-collapse state. How long do you think we have? Sabrina focused the lens on the Tree of Seasons' current condition, comparing it to the sanctuary's recorded decline. The similarities were undeniable and alarming. The equinox is when they'll make their move. Everything they've done has been building to that moment. She traced the projected path of magical destruction, seeing how it would spread from Hallowville to other magical hubs. We're not just fighting to save our town anymore. Quill's essence pulsed urgently through the chamber's vegetation, highlighting specific details in the carvings. Each revelation showed how thoroughly the collector had studied and adapted the sanctuary's destruction to their purposes. They weren't just copying history, they were refining it, improving on the very process that had torn reality apart centuries ago. The lens revealed one final detail, a subtle pattern of energy collection points around the sanctuary's perimeter. Similar configurations were already taking shape around Hallowville, disguised as natural magical fluctuations. The collector hadn't just prepared to destroy, they'd created an elaborate net to capture and control the resulting chaos. Sabrina watched in awe as Quill's essence swirled around them, transforming the chamber into a kaleidoscope of magical energy. The golden leaves of the grove caught the light like mirrors, their shimmer intensifying until the air itself seemed to glow. Through the fragmented lens, she saw magical currents taking shape, weaving intricate patterns that danced and twisted in the space between reality and memory. The chamber's carvings pulsed with renewed life, their ancient magic responding to Quill's presence. The recorded scenes lifted from the walls, merging into a three-dimensional tableau that hung in the air like a living tapestry. Recent events in Hallowville played alongside the sanctuary's memories, two timelines intertwined in a haunting display. "Noah, look," Sabrina whispered, adjusting the lens to focus on a shadowy figure moving through both past and present. The collector's movements caught her attention, something familiar in their fluid grace. She'd seen those precise gestures before, the same calculated efficiency in every motion. Her stomach tightened as she recognized Ivy Larkspur's characteristic mannerisms, though the collector's face remained obscured by ever-shifting magical energy. Noah's equipment chirped insistently. "These readings," he said, frowning at his detector. "The magical signature from the collector matches energy traces I picked up at the faction's rally." He showed her the overlapping patterns. "See? Whoever they are, they're versed in both Halloween and spring magic. That's rare in Hallowville." Sabrina nodded, her suspicions growing. Only someone with deep roots in the magical community would have that kind of knowledge. She watched as Quill's essence highlighted moments where the collector's magic had probed Hallowville's defenses. Through the lens, she saw how their power had created minute fractures in the town's protective barriers, the same subtle destabilization she'd witnessed during Ivy's demonstration of pure spring magic. The vision shifted, showing the collector studying the Tree of Seasons through distorted portal windows. Sabrina recognized the methodical approach, the careful positioning that kept them just out of sight. It matched Ivy's behavior during recent portal incidents perfectly, always present at the edges, observing but never directly involved. "The corrupted magic," Sabrina murmured, adjusting the lens again. The collector's power carried a distinctive signature, an artificial spring energy that felt wrong somehow, forced rather than natural. She'd sensed the same energy surrounding Ivy during faction gatherings, magic that sought to overpower Halloween's influence rather than work in harmony with it. The ethereal scene changed once more, transporting them to the greenhouse. Sabrina studied the collector's movements as they worked, their precise magical manipulation revealing trained expertise. Every gesture was controlled, efficient, exactly like Ivy's public demonstrations of power. The correlation was too strong to ignore. "Noah, this can't be coincidence," Sabrina said, watching the scene play out. "The matching signatures, the similar techniques, even the timing of everything, it all points to Ivy." She focused the lens on a particular moment when the collector channeled their power, the magical current flowing in patterns identical to Ivy's work. Through the lens, she could see how both signatures carried the same artificial undertone, magic that felt manufactured rather than drawn from Hallowville's natural balance. It was spring energy stripped of its natural harmony, weaponized against the very balance it should support. Quill's essence pulsed through nearby plants, drawing her attention to subtle details she might have missed. The way the collector shaped their spells matched Ivy's precise control. Their knowledge of Hallowville's magical infrastructure suggested someone with intimate access to the town's magical records. Even their choice of targets aligned with Ivy's public criticism of Halloween-focused protections. The vision continued to unfold, showing parallel scenes of the collector's work and Ivy's public appearances. Each new comparison added weight to Sabrina's growing certainty. The collector wasn't just someone who understood Hallowville's magic, they were someone who had helped shape it, someone who had earned the town's trust while planning its destruction. Noah's detector continued logging matching energy signatures, building a damning collection of evidence. "The magical resonance is almost identical," he said, comparing readings from multiple locations. "The only difference is intensity, the collector's power is amplified, but the base signature matches Ivy's exactly." Sabrina watched the scenes play out, her mind racing through implications. The collector's thorough understanding of both magical traditions, their ability to move freely through Hallowville's most protected spaces, their careful manipulation of public opinion through the spring magic faction, it all aligned with Ivy's position and capabilities. Sabrina traced the magical patterns through the fragmented lens, her breath catching as Quill's essence illuminated a timeline she hadn't noticed before. The spring magic faction's meetings, which had seemed random at first glance, now aligned perfectly with the collector's activities. Each gathering preceded a new disruption, a portal opening here, an artifact disappearing there. 3 weeks ago, she murmured, watching the scenes overlay each other. Ivy held that emergency meeting about seasonal transitions the night before the first portal appeared in the town square. The lens showed her the energy signatures, identical ripples of magic spreading outward from both events. Noah consulted his notes. And the Historical Society break-in happened right after their symposium on magical artifacts. Through the lens, Sabrina watched Ivy's movements during recent weeks. The faction leader had spent hours in the library's restricted section, claiming she needed to research spring rituals. But the magical traces left behind told a different story, pages disturbed in books about portal manipulation, ancient protective wards, and the fall of other magical sanctuaries. Look at this, Sabrina adjusted the lens, focusing on a particular moment. She requested access to the records about the Twilight Sanctuary's destruction. Said it was for comparing magical preservation techniques. The vision shifted, showing the collector studying the same texts, their magical signature pulsing with familiar energy. Quill's essence swirled around a particular scene, drawing her attention to the Twilight Sanctuary's remains. Both the collector and Ivy shared an unusual resonance with the site, their magic harmonizing with the lingering energy in a way that shouldn't be possible without intimate knowledge of its original structure. The sanctuary's fall, Sabrina said, pieces clicking into place. Ivy mentioned studying it during the last council meeting, but she knew details that weren't in any public record. The lens revealed matching magical techniques between Ivy's demonstrations and the collector's work at the sanctuary site, both showing an understanding that went beyond academic research. The vision shifted again, this time revealing the collector in a secluded clearing. They were arranging components for what appeared to be an equinox ritual, crystals aligned in a specific pattern, herbs placed with precise care. Sabrina recognized the setup instantly. Ivy had described this exact arrangement during a casual conversation about theoretical spring magic enhancement, down to the unusual placement of moonflowers and frost-touched leaves. The methodology is identical, Sabrina said, watching the collector work. Their movements matched Ivy's lecture gestures perfectly, the same efficient motions, the same careful attention to magical alignment. Even their way of channeling energy followed the unique pattern Ivy had demonstrated at faction meetings. Through the lens, she could see how the collector's magic carried Ivy's distinctive signature, though amplified and twisted toward darker purposes. The evidence built up like layers of magical sediment, the timing of events, the shared knowledge, the matching techniques, and that peculiar resonance with the sanctuary's remains. Noah's detector continued logging the overlapping energy patterns. Every reading shows the same base signature, he said, comparing the data. It's like they're two versions of the same magical source. Quill's essence pulsed through nearby plants, highlighting moments where Ivy's public actions had inadvertently revealed her deeper knowledge. Her casual mentions of ancient rituals, her specific questions about magical security, her convenient absences during the collector's appearances, each detail added weight to the growing certainty in Sabrina's mind. The magical display showed more recent events, the collector studying the Tree of Seasons through portal windows, using observation points that matched Ivy's regular patrol routes. Their careful positioning mirrored Ivy's behavior during faction gatherings, always present at the edges, watching and waiting. Sabrina focused the lens on the collector's magical technique. The artificial spring energy they wielded felt wrong, forced rather than natural, exactly like the power Ivy had demonstrated during her more controversial proposals. Both signatures carried the same manufactured quality, magic that sought to dominate rather than harmonize with Hallowville's natural balance. The timing, the knowledge, the magical signature, Sabrina said, watching another parallel scene unfold. Everything points to Ivy. She has the access, the expertise, and the motivation. The lens showed the collector preparing another ritual, their movements a perfect match for Ivy's teaching demonstrations. Quill's essence drew her attention to subtle details, the way both Ivy and the collector shaped their spells with the same precise control, their shared understanding of Hallowville's magical infrastructure, their identical approaches to manipulating seasonal energy. Each new comparison strengthened the connection between the faction leader's public face and the collector's hidden agenda.